Allan Aguirre here with your Incorruptible 2-minute warning for Friday, December 31st. Can you believe that? We've arrived. Hey, just a little something. So I had this, anyway, I was battling a 24-hour thing that ended up going 48 hours and blah, 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 blah. And there was something that I saw on my Facebook feed from 2 years ago that I was like, whoa, right? It showed up in the memories. And what did it say again? Here, let me just look. It kind of freaked me out a little bit because I was like, dang, because I'll explain why. But anyway, I posted this. Busy day today. 2020 is going to be quite, 2020 is going to be quite the year, and not in a way the majority of us are thinking. That was December 30th, 2019. You know, a few years ago, I'm going to say it was about 3 or 4 years ago, probably closer to 4 years ago. I was in a city 2 days before it was attacked by multiple gunmen. Of course, the narrative said one. Obviously, it wasn't. I mean, it was anyway. But the thing is, while I was there in the streets of that city, I stopped in the middle of the street and I looked around and I thought, this is an easy target. This is a soft target. And then, 24 hours later, 48 hours later, this horrific thing occurred. And I thought, man, I discerned it. It was actually happening. It was in the works of it being done while I was there. And when I said that, I don't talk about it very much because it's a little scary, right? But anyway, I said to myself at that point, it's like, you know what? I'm tired of being on the edge of the line, of that prophetic line. I want to be 3, 4, 5 steps into it. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to just run the line, that prophetic line. I don't want to just be on that edge of that, I don't want my toes wet. I want to be, chest high in the water. I don't want my toes to be, I don't want the water lapping my toes. I don't want my toes to be lapped by the prophetic waters. No, I want to be chest high in the prophetic waters. And so I started contending for that, and I started contending for that. And I see how, I get to look back and go, oh, look, the last couple years, like I'm going to say mid 2019 to the present that's really been going on. And it's exciting. It's exciting, but, it's a lot of responsibility, and, people don't like those people. You know what I'm saying? Hey, it's Friday. This is Friday mode. Welcome to Friday mode. So real quick, just a little bit of business real quick before we start. A week from yesterday, so next Thursday, I'm going to be having an outpatient procedure, an outpatient surgery that's going to have me a little messed up for about a week, and then it's going to take like maybe 3 weeks or so to be like fully healed. I'm not. That's going to impact this 2-minute warning more than it's going to impact Monday night and Tuesday morning. So I don't know. I'll try and show up and do some stuff next week, obviously. But then after Thursday, I probably won't be doing this for a couple weeks or 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe the entire month of January. I don't know. And maybe we just need to reevaluate whether we keep doing 2-minute warning. I enjoy it, but it's a lot of work. I mean, it gets in the way of schedule. Anyway, that sounds weird. It doesn't get in the way. It's just a lot of work. Anyway, I have no plans to close it or to shut it down. I'm just letting you know it's going to be a little sketchy for the next 3 to 4 weeks because of this outpatient thingamajigger I'm going to have. So definitely be praying for me. I'm not a real big fan of, surgery, anesthesia, all that crap. So it's weird, Oh, you want to go cast out some demons over there? No problem. Let's go. Oh, I need to go. No, right? It's like, yeah. So anyway, hi, how are you? There's a couple people out there. How are you? So this week we were talking about the 4 different New Years. And so what I was going to do, I was going to, like I do on Friday, I was going to tie it all up, tie it all together. And then in order to do that, what were we talking about? We were talking about New Year's for trees, New Year's for animals, this goofy rabbinical Talmudic stuff. And in order for me to talk about it and to explain it, because the first one was Rosh Hashanah, which is just, it's like their version. It's the Jewish version of Christmas. It really isn't the New Year. It's the end of the year, biblically speaking. And so what they did was they adapted a construct from Babylon. See, when Israel left Babylon, they left tainted. Every good Jew knows that the first temple was destroyed because of their sin and their not obeying of Torah. Technically, they didn't keep the Shemitah year. And so they didn't keep the Shemitah year for like seven cycles. And so God said, I'm going to get my Sabbath years out of you one way or another. And so he sent them to Babylon. Because of that, Daniel understood that, we're going to be released after 70 years because it's 10 sevens or something like that. And so he was going to get his Shemitah years. He was going to get his Sabbath years one way or another. And the way he got it was by sending them to Babylon, having them captive. And then at the end of that time frame that, he released them. That's why Daniel knew when they would be released. Right. And so why bondage? Well, bondage because they had to be punished because they were disobedient. They didn't keep the commandments. And 2, something Christians don't like to talk about, and that's the Bible talks about how the earth will actually, man's sin will actually impact the earth, the ground. And so the sin of man's sin people will actually be vomited off the land. Well, so God had to take them from the land so that the land could be healed from their sin. It's biblical. It's in there. Like I said, Christians don't like talking about that because it's very weird for them. So, and it's not just Israel it happens to. It happens to all the nations. And it's happened to nations since the very beginning. Look at the Tower of Babel. Because of the sin of Babel, which was a stargate, a portal, because of that sin, he made them all speak different languages so that they couldn't keep doing what they were doing. So, email. You can email us. I got emails everywhere. So that's why the Babylonian captivity. And then after they got their, but here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing, right? Every good Jew knows that the first temple was destroyed because of their sin, and they were sent to Babylon. You would think that would keep them from continuing in their way. Well, obviously, if you know what happened to Israel when they left Egypt and as they went forward, that's not the case. They actually didn't learn anything. They didn't apply what they learned in the desert. And when they got to the land of Canaan, they actually did everything they were not supposed to do, including not keeping the Shemitah year, the Sabbath year, which is why they went to Babylon. So you would think they would, learn their lesson. You would think. So, They leave Babylon. You would think they would learn their lesson, right? They leave Babylon. They go back to the promised land, right? Through remember Nehemiah and all that. They're going to rebuild the walls, and King Cyrus, the pagan, and what is it? Isaiah 45. King Cyrus, the pagan, is considered. God calls him my anointed one and my servant, and he uses a pagan ruler to facilitate Israel's returning back to the land, building the wall, and rebuilding the temple. But they leave Babylon with the Babylonian month names. If you want to know more about that, we fully suss it out in the Feast Unlocked book. They completely and fully. It's not good, but they do that. They leave Babylon with Babylonian month names. So, for example, well, we were talking about it in here on Monday. Let me just bring that up real quick. The month they call the month Tishri. It's actually, the biblical name is Ethanim. The Babylonian name is Tishri. I mean, they have a Babylonian month name called Tammuz. There's your first clue. You have a month named after a pagan god. Israel, Jews, Hebrews have a pagan god month name, Tammuz. There's your first clue. Instead of the month, all right, the biblical first month is called Abib because of the wheat harvest. The wheat has to be ripe, Abib, in order for it to be right. And so that first month, Abib, the Babylonian name is Nisan. And then Shevat is the 11th month. Biblically, it's called the 11th month. They call the Babylonian name is Shevat. And then the biblical sixth month, they call it Elul, which is again the Babylonian name. So not only do they leave Babylon with Babylonian month names, but they basically counterfeit Babylon's civil and religious calendar system, which means they're going to have a civil calendar, which starts in the fall, right, with Rosh Hashanah. It's not Rosh Hashanah, it's Yom Teruah. It's the Day of Trumpets. It's the Feast of Trumpets, right? The Feast of Trumpets has been hijacked, right? What is the Feast of Trumpets? The Feast of Trumpets is a memorial to remind them of the shofar blast of God from Shavuot 4 months prior. It's a memorial. It's a high Sabbath. It's a Rosh Chodesh, right? It's a new moon high Sabbath memorial commemorating what? The shofar blast. The shofar blast from Sinai. How do you take that and pervert it and turn it into a new year called Rosh Hashanah? Well, why would they don't want to remember, as it's a memorial, right? They don't want to remember how they completely screwed the pooch on Shavuot at Mount Sinai and balked at God's marriage proposal. They don't want to memorize that. They don't want to memorialize that. They don't want to memorial that type of cosmic failure. So they changed it and they adapted Babylon's calendar system of having a civil new year instead on that same day, called Rosh Hashanah. And then they have the biblical New Year, or the spiritual New Year, like Babylon, with the first month of Abib. So they've added, which you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to add or adopt or adapt syncretism. You're not allowed to do that. Biblically, they're not allowed to do that. The Torah tells them they can't. Yet, they do it all the time. They've done it, since they left Egypt. So, so not only do they leave with months, Babylonian month names, they leave with the Babylonian version of a civil calendar. And I think the Babylonians, it's in here. I have it in here. I think the Babylonians called it a kiru or something like that. And so they just basically ripped them off and did the same exact thing Babylon did. You can't do that. So here's what happened. So because they understood this much. They understood that the first temple was destroyed and they were sent to Babylonian captivity. And they lose the land for 70 plus years, an entire generation or so, because they broke Torah. So they decide, let me see here. Oh, where do you get the book? Go to planetbluemedia.com. Planetbluemedia.com, and you can see all our stuff. Not only do they do that, they broke the Torah, right? That this all happens because they broke the Torah. So what do? They decide, well, if they create a what they thought was going to be a failsafe, right? So they built a fence around each Torah commandment. And thank you, Marie. Thank you for your pledge. They created a failsafe around each Torah, each instruction, each commandment. Here's their thinking: if we don't break the fence, if we don't break that fence, that outer layer, then we can't break the actual commandment that sits in the middle of this fence, right? But unfortunately, they break more times than not. They break the commandment because of that failsafe. See what I'm saying? Because you can't do that. And the best example I use is the tassels. I showed you tassels the other day. So the tassel, there's basically two instructions to the tassels: wear them and make sure they have blue in them. That's it. So Jews don't have blue in their tassels. Non-Messianic Jews, traditional Jews, Orthodox Jews. You know what I'm saying? If they're not believers in Jesus and Yeshua, they don't wear blue in their tassels. They only wear white tassels. And here's why. Right? Here's the fence. The fence regarding tassels is, we're not really quite sure what hue of blue we're supposed to be using. So as not to break the commandment by having the wrong blue, we're not going to have any blue in it at all, thus breaking the commandment. And they do this all the time. Jesus brings it up in Mark 7. Mark 7, he says, your traditions make the scriptures null and void. Your traditions, and he gives an example of one regarding Corbin. He goes, you have so many traditions like this, and you literally break the commandments with these traditions. Jesus tells them this in Mark 7. And so it's called the Babylonian Talmud. So what they came up with all these fail safes, all these little fences. They came up with a way. It's like, we don't want this to ever happen again. We don't ever want to get punished to the extent where God destroys the temple. We get thrown into exile and we get kicked off the land. We don't want that to ever happen again. So they come back from Babylon, the Pharisees and the scribes and the Torah teachers, right? These people, with this what's considered the Babylonian Talmud, which is extracurricular instruction on the Torah. It's almost like they created a user guide for the Torah, and they actually elevate this user guide above the Torah, because the idea is, follow this user guide and you won't break the Torah. And that is the biggest problem. You got to remember, man, in the same way the enemy has been ransacking Christianity all these years, He's been ransacking Judaism to keep the two apart. Never the two shall twain shall meet, right? I mean, that's dangerous. If you're a Torah observant Christian and charismatic, just like Jesus and the disciples, wow, you're dangerous. So that's why Christianity is only because they're not Torah observant, and the Jews are only because they're not doing the Jesus thing. And then if you're not doing both charismatica, right? Then you're, so, but if you're believing in Jesus, keeping Torah and charismatic, just like Jesus and the disciples, the writers of the New Testament, now you're dangerous. Now you're fully, completely dangerous, and he doesn't like that. So he's trying to keep people away from that. He's trying to keep the Christians away from Torah. He's trying to keep the Jews away from Jesus. He's trying to keep everybody away from walking in the power of the Holy Spirit. And then we show up with Chameleon Church, and we're here we're here to equip you in all of those. We're here to equip you on how to walk for Jesus biblically, how to walk and keep the Torah biblically, and how to walk in the Holy Spirit with the gifts, healing the sick, cast out demons, speaking in tongues, raising, all that stuff biblically. Why am I bringing all this up? I bring all this up because in order for me to talk, so we talked about the 4 New Years. The first one is Rosh Hashanah, which I just explained, and I explained it in detail in here. The second one was the proper New Year of Abib, the first month. This will be your first month. He says flat out, this will be month 1 for you, Abib, and that's in our March, April. That's where we have Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, things of that nature. I'm going to put the comments up here so I can actually read them, so I can actually see them without having to bend over there in that tiny little screen. Oh, can I move them over there? Oh, I can't do that over there. I can't do that. Oh, all right. So now what do I do now that I moved them over there? Oh, I don't know if I can. How do I grab them now? Here, let me do this. Oh, I'm not going to see any of the comments. How weird is this? Here, let me do something real quick so I can grab my comments. Let me just, I think I can figure this out. Remember, I got all this there it is. I got all this new gear. I had a great text message from someone yesterday saying they wanted a pledge. They wanted to give to our fundraiser, and they go, we want to send you a gift so that you can hire someone to teach you how to use all your equipment. It was awesome. It was a joke, and I thought it was a great joke. Here's why I bring all this up. In order for me to talk to you about the other 2 New Years, the one for trees and the New Year for trees, agriculture, tithing, and the various tithes and the various, and the other one for animals. I could read you stuff from Deuteronomy, but in order for you to understand why they have these 2 other New Years, I would have to just sit here and tell you all about this Talmud stuff, all this rabbinical Judaism, all this Orthodox stuff, even Kabbalah, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do that to you. And here's why. Let me read some comments first, and I'll come back to you. All right, let me see here. That's crazy. All friends, red. Good. Okay, so here's why I decided not to do all that. There's a good reason, I think. There are some of us. I'll say that because I want to be nice. I wasn't very nice last week, was I? Some of us have this really perverse need to function from a religious spirit. I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying there are people out there that have this like innate, is that the right word? They have this almost like they can't help it. They have this need to function from a religious spirit. I don't know if it's because they're the middle child or they're the only child or mom and dad ignored them, or they have low, I don't know what's wrong with my voice, low self-esteem, the fear of man. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. I do, I just explained it. We want to equip you with the Holy Spirit, Jesus, and the Torah. And the enemy doesn't like that. So I don't know if it's because you're the only child, you're a middle child, you function from fear, the fear of man, you have low self-esteem. I mean, you have to you overcompensate. You think that's what people. I mean, whatever it is, it's a mess. And a lot of people function from a religious spirit, and they just can't help it. And Jesus isn't good enough. The Torah isn't good. You know what I'm saying? They have to overcompensate and like do all this weird, crazy ass crap to validate themselves. It's the weirdest thing. I've known people like this my whole life, unfortunately, and they get involved with cults. I talk about that stuff in here. I mean, I really do. I talk about it in here. They get involved with cults. They get involved with, they replace one goofy thing with another goofy thing. Okay. I know. So here's what I mean specifically. I know for a fact that there are people out there that they get this revelation of Torah, and they start understanding how I literally discuss this in here. I'm not trying to sell a book. I'm really not trying to. I'm just saying, if you have it, you can go and check it out. But they get this revelation of Torah, and they start finding out. They start seeing how pagan Christianity is, and then they do this crazy, insane thing where they leave Christianity. I know people that have literally left charismatic Christianity. They stop speaking in tongues. They stop worshiping in the Spirit. They stop worshiping demonstrative worship, and they leave Christianity, and they become like these crazy Torah people. They join cults like the Sacred Name movement. There's other types of cults out there, obviously, but that's a big one. They start getting this. You've heard me talk about this sacred name. They're sacred namers, but they don't even know it. If you all these various names for Jesus, Yahuwah, Shawah, Yo, you, Baba, and all these Y's and H's and W's. And yeah, I'm making fun of you because I think you're absolutely retarded for doing what you do. You're sacred namers, and you don't have the sand or the whatever, the balls to just own up to it and admit that you're a sacred namer, because you insist that if we don't, and there's a group that a lot of us are involved in on Facebook. It was on one post I counted. I even wrote it down. I counted. I think it was like 6 different ways people were calling Jesus in one post, in one stinking post. I'm not going to do it. But yeah, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so they're so jacked up. They're so jacked up with a religious spirit that they will literally go from being normal, the revelation of Torah, the revelation about the problems with Christianity, and then they lose their minds and they go way over there for no reason. There's no reason for you to be over there. Remember, Israel was going out into the fields and sacrificing to goat demons? Same mentality, right? And then what was the instruction? No, don't do that. Don't go out there all by yourself in the field. Instead, bring your sacrifice to us. Bring your sacrifice to the priest. It actually says to me, God says, because the priests are a proxy. Come to the tabernacle, come to the priest, give your offering to the priest so that he can offer it as a fellowship offering. So that keeps you from being out in the field by yourself doing some insane demonic crap to goat demons. Same difference. All right. So what they do is they get this revelation and then they go nuts. They go crazy nuts, right? Because part of that religious spirit is that Gnostic spirit. And the Torah community is just full of Gnosticism, right? That secret knowledge, man. I know something you don't know, right? And so they start moving away from Christianity, and they start moving away from sound spirituality. And then they start hating Christians. And they get to the point where if you go to church on Sunday, you're demonic. What? I can go to church any freaking day I want, and I also keep the Sabbath. So you're just wrong. See what I'm saying? And so they do this. And this happens all the time. I've seen it over and over. I see it too much, right? And then I've actually know about people that will eventually they get so perverted, right? The enemy comes in and perverts them so bad. He's got his hand so far up them that they leave Jesus entirely and turn to Judaism. They're a special kind of stupid. And so they're just, they think themselves out of faith, right? And part of that process is calling charismatica Kundalini. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen to you if you start doing that? If you start thinking that, if you start calling the Holy Spirit demonic? You think God's going to be championing you? Oh, hell no. The enemy is. And all he has to do is one little step at a time, right? And you're tempted by the lust of your own flesh. You have such a need to be religiously Gnostic and to have this like secret little, to be special. Jeez. That they actually leave Jesus and become, they turn to Judaism. I know people that have turned to Kabbalah. They're Kabbalists now. I mean, I literally know people. I know them that have done these things. And so I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give you any amount of information. I'm not going to give you any time. I'm not going to do any of that. In case there's somebody out there watching that the enemy, that's all the enemy needs to trigger them to go digging for this crap and then coming out on the wrong side. I will not be held responsible for that. If you're going to get stupid, you get stupid on your own. I'm not going to help you get stupid. I'm here to keep you from being stupid. So that's why I'm not doing that. Instead, I'm going to read your comment. Cool. People are listening. That's good. I love it. Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys humble me by even being here. So, yeah, it's a crazy world out there, and it's so not necessary. Remember, keep it simple, stupid. You can go back. We did a teaching on that. Keep it simple, stupid. It's not about all this weird, crazy stuff, man. It's not. It's about Messiah and him crucified, walking in soundness, right? Sound mind, there's a way to do this, and there's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do it. Why? It's not broken, so don't do it wrong. Do it right. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's that's why I talk about it. I'm you swap out one goofy thing for another. Don't do that. Don't be goofy. Stop being goofy. It's not about being goofy. It's about being obedient. That's why leadership is so important. Paul, the Apostle Paul, apostle to the Gentiles, was being accused of preaching against Torah observance, and he wasn't. That's the Sanhedrin lie. The Sanhedrin lie has become Christianity's truth. I'll explain that, and we'll finish with that. The Sanhedrin lie is that Jesus came and Jesus spoke against Moses. Jesus spoke against the temple, and he spoke against Torah, and he didn't. They brought false witnesses against Jesus and accused him of that, right? They couldn't catch him doing that, so they paid false witnesses to accuse Jesus of speaking against Moses, the Torah, and against the temple. Remember that? Yep. Stephen, when he was murdered, they brought false witnesses against him, saying that he taught against the Torah, that Jesus came to do away with the law. That was one of the accusations against Stephen. Go look at it. It's in the book of Acts, right? Because see, that's what is preached today. Christianity preaches that Jesus came and did away with the law. That was an accusation against Stephen, that Stephen preached that Jesus came to do away with Torah, and they stoned him for it. They killed Jesus for it, and then they tried to do that with Paul, but Paul was released, and so they never got to him. That's called the Sanhedrin lie. The Sanhedrin lie is that Jesus did away with the Torah, and that's become Christianity's truth. It doesn't have to be this way. But when you walk in the flesh, when you pursue this thing in the flesh, that's what we talked about Monday night, Exodus to Ingathering devotional. When you walk in the flesh instead of in the spirit, these things happen. These things will happen. Because if you're trying to do this spirituality thing in the flesh, you're not doing it in Messiah. You're not doing it in the Holy Spirit. And when you're not doing it in the Holy Spirit, and it's a spiritual enterprise, what spirituality do you think is going to be involved if it's not done in the Holy Spirit? Well, the enemy. and then the enemy twists and perverts all this stuff, and you come up with all this goofy stuff that people come up with, and it's not necessary. So, hey, I'm going to ask you to pray for me. I will see you Monday night, and I'll see you Tuesday morning. Keep me in your prayers. Next Thursday, I have an outpatient deal I got to go do. And, I'm just not, that stuff freaks me out. That stuff. Yeah. So you can just pray for me. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And hey, it's the Gregorian New Year tonight. So if you're going to go out and party, be careful. If you're going to go out and party, be careful. Have fun. Don't be stupid. Remember who you are. Anybody? I don't want to get into what's wrong, but how does the field manual help? How does the field manual help? Well, here's how the field manual helps. I'll just read you what it says in the back. Okay, the back of the field manual says the Apostle Paul writes the following in 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 12 in regard to Israel's journey, their exodus from Egypt to their ingathering in the Promised Land. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, our warning, on whom the end of the age has come. That's the end time church. That's us, the end of the age. That's 1 Corinthians 10, 11. So remember, 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 12. Go read it. Essentially, Paul is stating that what happened to the children of Israel in the desert, as recorded in the books of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, was written down as a warning and for our instruction as the end times New Testament church. The Message Bible puts verse 11 like this. These are all warning markers, danger, in our history books, written down so that we don't repeat their mistakes. Our positions in the story are parallel. They at the beginning, we at the end, and we are just as capable of messing it up as they were. Written down so that we don't repeat their mistakes. Their mistakes cost them their lives, physically and spiritually. In fact, Paul says in verse 5 of chapter 10 of 1 Corinthians that with most of them, God was not pleased, and they never made it to their prophetic destiny, their prophetic inheritance, the Promised Land. So what happened in the desert? What is Paul talking about? How do we heed these instructions? What are those instructions? And how do we avoid making the same mistakes? How do we enter into our promised land, our prophetic destiny and inheritance? That's the amazing journey on which we're about to embark. Our Exodus to Ingathering series is your guide in and through the examples and instructions referenced by the Apostle Paul. It is the legend, if you will, to the map of your victorious and amazing journey, your exodus from Egypt to the Father's ingathering in the promised land of your prophetic destiny and inheritance. That's how the field manual helps. And I hope that helped you understand how it helps. Right? Cool. Yeah. All right. Happy Gregorian New Year.
The views and opinions expressed during our broadcasts are solely those of the broadcast producers, hosts, and/or guests, etc., and are not necessarily the views or opinions of the Travelogue Network, its sponsors, or affiliates.